In the year 2147, humanity had reached a level of technology that allowed them to create simulations so realistic they were almost impossible to distinguish from reality. These simulations were used for various purposes, from training astronauts to preparing soldiers for combat. But one project stood out among the rest. It was called Erebus, and it was designed by a team of scientists at the New Frontier Institute. The goal was simple yet ambitious: to simulate survival on a Class 13 Deathworld, a planet with extreme environmental hazards, dangerous wildlife, and limited resources. Dr. Emily Hayes, the lead scientist behind Erebus, carefully selected 4 participants for the experiment. Each person brought unique skills to the table. Alex Carter was an engineer known for his problem-solving abilities. Rachel Dawson was a biologist with expertise in alien ecosystems. Jason Meyer was a former soldier who had trained in survival tactics. And Olivia Grant was a psychologist tasked with monitoring how the group worked together under pressure. Together, they formed a team capable of handling whatever challenges Erebus threw at them. The simulation began without delay. The participants found themselves standing in a dense forest filled with towering trees and glowing plants. The air smelled strange, carrying hints of sulfur and something metallic. Almost immediately, rain started pouring down, but it wasn't ordinary rain. It was acidic, burning their skin if they didn't take cover quickly. The group scrambled to gather materials and build a shelter using what little they had been given at the start. As the days passed, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Predatory creatures roamed the area, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Some moved silently through the underbrush, while others let out eerie calls that echoed through the forest. One night, a pack of wolf-like beasts surrounded their makeshift camp. Jason took charge, organizing the group into a defensive formation. With sticks sharpened into crude spears and rocks as improvised weapons, they managed to fend off the attackers. By morning, they were bruised and exhausted, but alive. Despite the constant danger, the group adapted quickly. Alex used his engineering skills to improve their tools, crafting stronger shelters and traps to catch food. Rachel studied the local plants and animals, identifying which ones were safe to eat and which could be used for medicine. Jason kept watch during the nights, ensuring everyone stayed safe while they slept. Olivia focused on keeping morale high, reminding them that teamwork was their greatest asset. But something unexpected happened during the 3rd week. The simulation program gave the participants an option. They could either end the experiment or request a harder difficulty level. To Dr. Hayes and her colleagues watching from outside, this choice seemed absurd. Why would anyone willingly choose to make things more difficult? Yet, when the question appeared before the group, all 4 agreed without hesitation. They wanted to push themselves further, to see just how far they could go. Dr. Hayes watched the decision unfold with a mix of fascination and concern. She had anticipated many outcomes, but this wasn't one of them. The participants' willingness to embrace greater challenges intrigued her. Was it human nature to seek out adversity? Or was there something deeper driving them? Once the new difficulty level activated, Erebus transformed dramatically. The gravity increased slightly, making even walking feel like a chore. The predators became faster and deadlier, able to track the group's movements over long distances. The flora itself turned hostile, with vines that wrapped around ankles and pulled people to the ground. Acid rainstorms intensified, forcing the group to spend more time indoors repairing their damaged shelter. Alex worked tirelessly to modify their equipment, creating tools that could cut through the thick foliage and defend against ambushes. He experimented with different designs, testing each one until he found solutions that worked. Rachel continued her research, observing the mutated creatures and noting patterns in their behavior. Her insights helped the group predict attacks and avoid unnecessary confrontations. Jason maintained discipline, teaching everyone basic combat techniques and ensuring no one fell behind. Olivia monitored the mental state of the group, offering support whenever tensions ran high. However, the increased difficulty began to wear on them. Supplies dwindled faster than expected, leading to heated debates about rationing. Arguments broke out over small decisions, like who should carry extra weight or whose idea to follow when planning routes. One evening, after narrowly escaping, a swarm of razor-toothed insects' tempers flared. Jason snapped at Rachel for taking too long to analyze a sample, accusing her of wasting time when they needed to keep moving. His words stung, and for a moment silence fell over the group. Olivia stepped in, her calm voice cutting through the tension. "We're all tired," she said, "but we're still here because we trust each other. Let's focus on what matters, surviving." Her words reminded them why they had come this far. They weren't just surviving to prove they could endure hardship. They were proving something bigger, that humanity could adapt to anything. Even as the challenges mounted, they resolved to face them together. And though they didn't know it yet, their journey was only beginning. With the new difficulty level activated, Erebus became an even more unforgiving place. The gravity grew heavier, making every step feel like lifting weights. Even simple tasks, like carrying supplies or climbing over fallen trees, left the group, gasping for breath. The predators that hunted them became faster and smarter, their glowing eyes appearing in the darkness more often than before. But the most unsettling change came from the plants themselves. Vines twisted around ankles, pulling people to the ground. Bioluminescent flowers released clouds of spores that made breathing difficult. Every inch of the forest seemed alive and hostile. Alex Carter worked harder than ever to keep the group equipped for survival. He spent hours modifying their tools, using scraps of metal and pieces of broken equipment to create sharper blades and sturdier spears. One day he managed to craft a device that sent out low-frequency vibrations, scaring away some of the smaller creatures that lurked nearby. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them a moment of relief when they needed it most. Rachel Dawson, meanwhile, focused on understanding the mutated wildlife. She noticed patterns in the behavior of the predators, such as how they avoided certain areas during specific times of the day. Her observations helped the group plan safer routes through the forest. Jason Meyer took charge of security, always scanning their surroundings for signs of danger. He taught everyone basic self-defense techniques, showing them how to use makeshift weapons effectively. His military background proved invaluable, especially when they faced larger threats. Olivia Grant kept the group's spirits up, reminding them why they had chosen to stay in the simulation. She encouraged them to share stories about their lives, outside Erebus, giving them something to look forward to when the experiment ended. Despite her efforts, cracks began to form in their unity. The constant pressure was taking its toll. One morning, after another sleepless night filled with the sounds of distant growls and rustling leaves, tensions boiled over. Rachel had been examining a strange plant near their campsite, trying to determine whether it was safe to eat. Jason approached her, his face tight with frustration. "We don't have time for this," he snapped. "You've been poking at that thing for hours. We need to move." Rachel straightened up, her voice calm but firm. "If I don't figure out what's edible, we'll starve. Would you rather I guess and risk poisoning us?" Jason clenched his jaw, clearly struggling to keep his temper in check. "Fine, but hurry up. We're wasting daylight." Alex stepped between them, holding up his hands. "Both of you, stop. Arguing isn't going to help. Let's focus on what we need to do next." Olivia nodded in agreement. "He's right. We're a team. If we start turning on each other, we won't last long." The argument ended there, but the tension lingered. Everyone felt it, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. They knew they couldn't afford mistakes, not in a world this dangerous. Yet the harder they tried to stay united, the more the strain showed. As the days passed, the group encountered new challenges. Acid rainstorms became more frequent, forcing them to reinforce their shelter constantly. Food shortages forced difficult decisions about rationing. Water sources were scarce, and the ones they found were often contaminated. Each problem required quick thinking and cooperation, but fatigue made everything harder. Simple disagreements turned into heated debates, and trust started to waver. Then, one evening, something unusual happened. While searching for firewood, Alex stumbled upon a series of strange symbols carved into the bark of a tree. At first, he thought they were random marks, perhaps caused by the claws of a predator. But as he followed the trail, he found more symbols etched into rocks and logs. They weren't part of the natural environment. They looked deliberate, almost like writing. Curious, Alex called the others over. Rachel examined the symbols closely, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These aren't random," she said, finally. "They're too uniform. Someone or something put them here." Jason frowned. "What are you saying? That there's someone else out there?" "Maybe," Rachel replied. "Or maybe whoever lived here before us left these behind. Either way, we should investigate." The group decided to follow the trail of symbols, hoping it would lead them to answers. After hours of walking, they reached a swampy area filled with thick mud and tangled roots. In the center of the swamp stood an ancient-looking obelisk, half buried in the muck. Its surface was covered in the same symbols they had seen earlier, glowing faintly in the dim light. Alex approached cautiously, reaching out to touch the obelisk. As soon as his fingers brushed against its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him. Visions flooded his mind, images of a civilization that once thrived on the planet. He saw towering cities, advanced technology, and lush landscapes. But then the scenes shifted, showing destruction and chaos. The civilization had collapsed, wiped out by its own hubris. When the visions faded, Alex stumbled back, shaken. The others gathered around him, asking what he had seen. He described the images as best he could, leaving everyone stunned. Rachel suggested they try to transport the obelisk back to their camp, believing it might hold valuable information. It was a risky decision. Carrying such a heavy object through the swamp would slow them down and make them vulnerable to attacks. But they agreed it was worth the effort. The journey back was grueling. The mud sucked at their boots, making each step a struggle. Predators circled them, drawn by the noise of their movements. At one point, a massive insect-like creature emerged from the shadows, its mandibles snapping menacingly. Jason led the defense, driving the creature away with a well-aimed spear. By the time they returned to their shelter, they were exhausted but triumphant. Back at the camp, Alex set to work studying the obelisk. Using salvaged parts from their equipment, he managed to create a crude interface that allowed him to access fragments of data stored within the artifact. What he discovered was both fascinating and alarming. The obelisk contained information about hidden underground bunkers scattered across the planet. These bunkers supposedly held advanced technology, capable of surviving the harshest conditions. The revelation sparked a debate among the group. Jason argued they should focus on immediate survival rather than chasing uncertain rewards. "We don't even know if those bunkers exist," he said. "And if they do, getting to them could kill us." Rachel countered, "But if they're real, they could save us. We can't ignore this chance." Alex sided with Rachel, pointing out that staying in one place was becoming increasingly dangerous. Olivia, sensing the group's division, stepped in to mediate. "Let's think carefully," she said. "This is a big decision. If we go, we need to be prepared for anything. If we stay, we need to fortify our position. Either way, we have to stick together." After much discussion, the majority agreed to pursue the bunkers. They knew the journey would test them like never before, but they also believed it was their best chance at uncovering the secrets of Erebus. With renewed determination, they packed their gear and set out, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they walked, the forest seemed darker and more ominous than ever. Strange noises echoed around them, and the air felt heavier. Yet despite the fear gnawing at their minds, they pressed on. They had chosen this path, knowing it would be hard. And though they didn't realize it yet, the challenges waiting for them would push them to their absolute limits. The journey to the bunkers was nothing short of grueling. The group trudged through dense forests, crossed rivers with icy currents, and climbed rocky cliffs that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky. Every step felt heavier than the last, not just because of the increased gravity, but also because of the constant threat of danger. Predators lurked in every shadow, their glowing eyes watching from afar. The air grew colder as they moved farther from their original camp, and the Nights became longer and darker. Alex Carter led the way most of the time, using a makeshift compass he had built from salvaged parts. He studied the obelisk's data whenever they stopped to rest, trying to pinpoint the exact location of the nearest bunker. Rachel Dawson stayed close to him, scanning the environment for anything useful, edible plants, clean water, or even signs of shelter. Jason Meyer brought up the rear, his sharp eyes scanning the trees and underbrush for movement. Olivia Grant walked in the middle, helping carry supplies and keeping an eye on everyone's mental state. She knew how fragile morale could be when people were pushed to their limits. Despite their careful planning, things went wrong almost immediately. On the second day of their trek, they encountered a massive creature unlike anything they had seen before. It resembled a mix between a bear and a lizard with thick armored scales and razor-sharp claws. Its roar shook the ground beneath their feet, sending birds scattering into the sky. The group froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then Jason sprang into action, shouting orders. "Stay together!" he yelled. "Form a line!" They obeyed, quickly forming a defensive stance with their crude weapons ready. Alex held a spear tipped with a shard of metal, while Rachel clutched a sharpened stick. Olivia gripped a rock tightly, her hands trembling slightly. Jason stood at the front, holding a long pole reinforced with rope. The creature charged at them, its claws slashing through the air. Jason dodged to the side, jabbing the pole into its side. The beast roared in pain but didn't stop. It swung its massive tail, knocking Rachel off her feet. "Rachel!" Alex shouted, rushing to help her up. Jason kept the creature distracted, dodging its attacks and striking back whenever he saw an opening. Finally, after what felt like hours, the beast retreated into the forest, leaving behind deep claw marks on the ground. Everyone collapsed onto the dirt, breathing heavily. Rachel had a nasty gash on her leg, which she bandaged quickly with strips torn from her shirt. No one spoke for a while. They just sat there staring at the trees where the creature had disappeared. That night, as they huddled around a small fire, the mood was grim. "We can't keep going like this," Jason said finally, breaking the silence. "Every step we take brings us closer to something worse." "We don't have a choice," Alex replied, his voice firm. "If we turn back now, all of this will have been for nothing." "He's right," Rachel added softly. "The bunker might be our only chance to survive." Olivia nodded, though she looked pale and tired. "We'll make it," she said, though her words lacked conviction. "We just need to keep moving forward." The next morning they pressed on, though their pace was slower. Rachel limped slightly, favoring her injured leg. Alex helped her whenever the terrain became too difficult, offering his shoulder for support. They rationed their food carefully, chewing on dried strips of meat and sipping water sparingly. The landscape changed as they traveled, becoming more barren and desolate. Trees gave way to rocky plains and the glowing plants disappeared entirely. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional distant growl. On the fifth day, they reached the coordinates Alex had calculated from the obelisk's data. What they found was both impressive and daunting. The entrance to the bunker was hidden beneath a thick layer of vines and moss, partially buried in the ground. It took hours of digging and cutting to uncover the heavy metal door. When they finally opened it, they were greeted by a rush of stale air and the faint hum of machinery. Inside, the bunker was dimly lit by emergency lights that flickered occasionally. The walls were lined with shelves stocked with supplies, sealed containers of food, bottles of water, medical kits, and tools. There were also strange devices scattered around, some of which looked like advanced versions of the equipment they had been using. Alex immediately set to work examining them, his face lighting up with excitement. "This is incredible," he said, holding up a small device that emitted a soft blue glow. "I think this controls the weather outside. If we can figure out how to use it, we might be able to clear the toxic atmosphere." Rachel explored another section of the bunker, finding a room filled with holographic displays. She activated one, revealing detailed maps of the planet and information about its ecosystem. "Look at this," she called out. "These maps show other bunkers and the locations of underground tunnels connecting them." Jason wandered into a third room, where he discovered rows of sleeping pods. Each pod was equipped with life support systems and monitors displaying vital signs. "What are these for?" he asked, running his hand over the smooth surface of one. "They're probably designed for long-term survival," Alex guessed. "If the environment gets too bad, you could seal yourself in here and wait it out." Olivia stayed near the entrance, keeping watch in case anything or anyone tried to follow them inside. Despite the bunker's apparent safety, she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The symbols they had seen earlier haunted her thoughts. Who had created this place? And why had they left it behind? As they settled into the bunker, tensions began to ease slightly. For the first time in days, they had shelter, food, and a sense of security. But the relief was short-lived. While Alex worked on deciphering the alien technology, Rachel stumbled upon a recording stored in one of the holographic displays. It showed images of the planet's original inhabitants, a humanoid species with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. Their voices echoed through the room, speaking in a language none of them understood. But the tone was unmistakable. It was a warning. "They're talking about some kind of disaster," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "Something big is coming." "What does that mean?" Jason asked, frowning. "I'm not sure," Rachel admitted, "but it doesn't sound good." Alex joined them, his expression serious. "Whatever it is, we need to prepare for it. This bunker won't protect us forever." The group exchanged uneasy glances. They had survived so much already, but the thought of facing another catastrophe, even one they couldn't fully understand, was overwhelming. Yet, despite their fears, they resolved to stay focused. They fortified the bunker, setting traps outside and reinforcing the doors. They rationed their supplies carefully, knowing they might need them later. And they continued studying the technology, hoping to unlock its secrets before it was too late. Days turned into weeks, and the bunker became their new home. The forest outside remained hostile, but inside, they found a fragile sense of stability. Still, the warning lingered in their minds, a reminder that their fight for survival was far from over. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a storm was brewing. One that would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The warning from the holographic recording weighed heavily on the group. Rachel Dawson replayed it over and over, hoping to decipher more details about the impending disaster. The images showed massive waves of destruction, a planet consumed by fire, collapsing cities and skies choked with ash. The voices of the original inhabitants were filled with urgency, their glowing eyes wide with fear. Whatever had wiped them out was coming for Erebus again. Alex Carter worked tirelessly to understand the alien technology scattered throughout the bunker. He spent hours tinkering with devices, trying to figure out how they functioned. One machine caught his attention, a large console covered in the same symbols they had seen carved into trees and rocks. When he activated it, a hologram projected above the surface, showing a countdown timer ticking down in an unfamiliar numerical system. Alex stared at it, his heart sinking. "This is bad," he muttered under his breath. "What's bad?" Jason Meyer asked, stepping closer. Alex pointed to the hologram. "I think this is a countdown. It's not in our time units, but I can estimate. If I'm right, we have less than 7 days before something happens." "7 days?" Olivia Grant exclaimed, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, something? What's going to happen?" "I don't know yet," Alex admitted. "But based on those recordings, it's probably catastrophic." Rachel joined them, her face pale. "We need to focus. If this place is going to be hit by some kind of disaster, we have to prepare. We can't just sit here waiting for it." Jason nodded. "Agreed. Let's fortify the bunker as much as we can, and we should gather anything useful from outside while we still can." They divided the tasks among themselves. Jason took charge of reinforcing the bunker's defenses, setting up traps near the entrance and sealing cracks in the walls. Alex continued studying the alien devices, determined to unlock their full potential. Rachel scouted the surrounding area, collecting samples of plants and soil that might provide clues about the upcoming event. Olivia stayed inside, organizing supplies and keeping track of their dwindling resources. Each day brought new challenges. The environment outside grew increasingly hostile, Acid rain poured down in torrents, forcing them to wear protective gear whenever they ventured out. Predators became bolder, attacking in larger numbers and ignoring the traps set around the bunker. Once a swarm of insect-like creatures descended on them, their wings buzzing like chainsaws. Jason fought them off with a makeshift flamethrower Alex had built, but the encounter left everyone shaken. Inside the bunker, tempers flared as exhaustion set in. Arguments broke out over minor issues: how much food to eat, who should carry extra weight during supply runs, or whether to risk exploring farther from the safety of the bunker. One evening, after a particularly tense debate about rationing water, Jason snapped at Rachel. "You're wasting too much time analyzing dirt when we should be focusing on survival." Rachel's jaw tightened. "If we don't understand what's happening, we won't survive at all." Olivia stepped between them, her voice calm but firm. "Both of you, stop. Arguing isn't helping anyone. We're all tired, but we need to work together if we want to make it through this." Her words reminded them why they had come so far. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were proving that humanity could adapt to anything. Even as the pressure mounted, they resolved to stay united. On the 5th day, Alex made a breakthrough. He managed to activate one of the alien machines, which emitted a low-frequency pulse that cleared the toxic atmosphere within a small radius around the bunker. For the first time in weeks, they could step outside without wearing gas masks. The fresh air was a small victory, but it lifted their spirits. However, Alex warned that the effect was temporary and limited to the immediate area. "It's not a permanent solution," he said, "but it buys us some time." Rachel returned from her latest scouting mission with troubling news. She had discovered deep fissures in the ground, some of which glowed faintly with molten light. "The planet's core is destabilizing," she explained. "Whatever disaster is coming, it's going to be huge. We might not survive it." The group gathered in the main chamber of the bunker, their faces grim. "We've faced worse odds before," Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. "If we stick together, we'll find a way." Jason shook his head. "I don't see how. This isn't like fighting predators or fixing tools. This is the planet itself turning against us." Olivia spoke up, her tone steady. "Then we prepare for the worst. If we can't stop it, we can at least endure it. These bunkers were designed to protect people from disasters. Maybe they'll give us a chance." With renewed determination, they focused on making the bunker as secure as possible. They reinforced the doors with metal plating and stocked up on supplies. Alex rigged the weather control device to run continuously, extending its range slightly. Rachel identified safe zones within the bunker where they could take refuge during the worst of the disaster. Jason drilled everyone on emergency procedures, ensuring they knew what to do if things went wrong. As the countdown timer ticked closer to 0, the group grew quieter. They spent their final hours reflecting on their journey, the challenges they had overcome, the bonds they had formed, and the sacrifices they had made. Despite the uncertainty ahead, they felt a sense of pride. They had pushed themselves beyond their limits, proving that even in the harshest conditions, humanity could persevere. When the timer reached 0, the world outside erupted in chaos. The ground split open, releasing rivers of lava that flowed across the landscape. Toxic clouds filled the sky, blotting out the sun. Explosions rocked the planet, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Inside the bunker, the group huddled together, bracing themselves against the tremors. For hours, the disaster raged on. The bunker shook violently, threatening to collapse at any moment. Dust and debris clogged the air filters, forcing them to rely on oxygen tanks. Yet, despite the odds, the structure held firm. Slowly, the shaking subsided, and the explosions faded into silence. Outside, the world was unrecognizable, a barren wasteland covered in ash and molten rock. When they finally emerged from the bunker, blinking in the dim light of a red-tinged sky, they were battered but alive. They had survived the impossible, not because they sought glory, but because they refused to give up. As they stood together amidst the ruins, they realized that their journey wasn't just about survival. It was about resilience, teamwork, and the unyielding human spirit. When the shaking finally stopped and the explosions faded into silence, the group cautiously emerged from the bunker. The world outside was almost unrecognizable. The once dense forest had been reduced to charred stumps and ash-covered ground. Rivers of molten lava crisscrossed the landscape, glowing faintly in the dim light. The sky was a deep red, streaked with black clouds that blocked out the sun. It was as if the planet itself had been torn apart. Alex Carter took a cautious step forward, his boots crunching on the brittle remains of what used to be fertile soil. He looked around, his face grim but determined. "This is it," he said softly. "The end of Erebus." Rachel Dawson followed close behind, her eyes scanning the horizon. She carried a small container filled with samples she had collected during their final days in the bunker. "It's not just the end of this simulation," she said. "It's proof that we can survive even when everything falls apart." Jason Meyer stood at the entrance of the bunker, gripping his makeshift spear tightly. His sharp gaze darted across the desolate landscape, searching for any sign of movement. "We made it through the worst," he said. "But we're not done. Yet if we want to get out of here alive, we need to find higher ground, somewhere safer." Olivia Grant stayed near the back, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a medical kit. She had spent most of the disaster tending to minor injuries and keeping everyone calm. Now, as they faced the aftermath, she felt a mix of relief and dread. "We've come so far," she said, "but I don't think anyone could have imagined this." The group began moving slowly, picking their way across the ruined terrain. Every step was a challenge. The ground was uneven, littered with jagged rocks and patches of still smoldering earth. The air was thick with ash, making it hard to breathe without masks. They rationed their oxygen carefully, knowing they couldn't afford to waste it. As they traveled, they noticed strange changes in the environment. Some areas were completely barren, while others showed signs of new growth. Small plants with metallic leaves sprouted from the ashes, their surfaces shimmering faintly in the dim light. Rachel knelt to examine one, brushing away the dust. "These weren't here before," she said. "They must have adapted to the destruction somehow." "Adaptation," Alex muttered, nodding thoughtfully. "That's what this whole experiment has been about, isn't it? Seeing how far we can push ourselves, and how quickly we can adapt." Jason interrupted their conversation with a sharp whistle. "Look ahead," he said, pointing toward a distant ridge. A faint glow emanated from beyond it, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. "Whatever that is, it might be our best chance of finding help. Or answers." The group pressed on, driven by curiosity and the hope that the glow signaled something useful. As they climbed the ridge, the ground grew hotter beneath their feet. The air shimmered with heat waves, distorting their view of the horizon. When they finally reached the top, they stopped in awe. Below them stretched a vast crater, its edges lined with molten rock. In the center of the crater floated a massive structure, a crystalline dome that pulsed with the same rhythmic light they had seen earlier. The surface of the dome was covered in intricate patterns resembling the symbols they had encountered throughout their journey. "What is that?" Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling of the lava. "Below? I don't know," Alex admitted. "But it wasn't here before the disaster. It must be connected to whatever caused all this." Rachel stepped closer to the edge of the ridge, peering down at the dome. "It looks alive," she said, "like it's part of the planet itself." Jason tightened his grip on his spear. "We need to be careful. This could be dangerous." Despite the risks, the group decided to investigate. They descended into the crater slowly, navigating the treacherous slopes with great care. The heat was intense, forcing them to move quickly to avoid overheating. As they approached the dome, they noticed that the symbols on its surface shifted and changed, as if responding to their presence. Alex reached out tentatively, placing his hand against the smooth surface. Immediately, a surge of energy coursed through him, similar to what he had experienced when touching the obelisk. Visions flooded his mind, images of the planet's past, present, and future. He saw the civilization that had created the bunkers and the dome, harnessing the planet's power to sustain themselves. But he also saw their downfall, brought about by greed and hubris. Finally, he saw humanity, not just the four of them, but all of humanity, standing on the brink of a new era. When the visions ended, Alex stumbled back, gasping for breath. The others gathered around him, asking what he had seen. He described the images as best he could, leaving everyone stunned. "This place isn't just a relic of the past," he said. "It's a message to us. Humanity has the potential to rebuild, to create something better than what came before. But we have to choose wisely." Rachel nodded slowly. "It's like the planet is giving us a second chance," she said. "A chance to learn from the mistakes of those who came before us." Jason frowned, looking skeptical. "And what happens if we mess it up again?" "We won't," Olivia said firmly. "Not if we remember why we're here, not if we keep working together." With renewed purpose, the group studied the dome, trying to understand its secrets. Alex worked tirelessly to interface with it, using knowledge he had gained from the alien technology in the bunker. Rachel documented every detail, hoping to preserve the information for future generations. Jason kept watch, ensuring no one ventured too close to the unstable edges of the crater. Olivia stayed by Alex's side, offering support whenever he needed it. Hours passed, and the dome began to respond to their efforts. The pulsing light grew brighter, and the symbols on its surface rearranged themselves into patterns that resembled Earth's constellations. A low hum filled the air, resonant and soothing. Then, without warning, the dome opened, revealing a chamber within. Inside the chamber was a single pedestal, atop which rested a small crystal orb. The orb glowed softly, emitting warmth that contrasted sharply with the harsh environment outside. Alex approached it cautiously, reaching out to touch it. As soon as his fingers brushed its surface, the orb dissolved into light, spreading outward, until it enveloped the entire group. When the light faded, they found themselves standing in a pristine version of the planet. The air was clean, the ground lush with greenery. Birds sang in the distance, and streams flowed freely. It was as though the disaster had never happened. Dr. Emily Hayes and her team watched in amazement as the simulation ended. The participants emerged shaken but triumphant, their faces marked by exhaustion and pride. They had faced unimaginable challenges and prevailed, not because they sought glory, but because they refused to surrender. In debriefings afterward, each member reflected on their experience. Alex spoke of the importance of innovation and adaptation. Rachel emphasized the need for understanding and respect for nature. Jason highlighted the value of teamwork and discipline, and Olivia reminded everyone of the resilience of the human spirit. Back at the Institute, Dr. Hayes considered the implications of the experiment. Erebus had tested the limits of human endurance, proving that humanity could survive even in the harshest conditions. But more importantly, it had shown that survival alone wasn't enough. True progress came from learning, adapting, and choosing to build a better future. As the participants returned to their lives outside the simulation, they carried with them the lessons they had learned. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they had the strength to face whatever came next. Because in the end, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its ability to conquer. It was its capacity to endure, adapt, and rise above.